Welcome to Try Not to Overthink It, where we explore the intricate landscape of mental health, well-being, and everyday life. I'm RJ.
And I'm Khalil.
Join us as we dive into insightful conversations, share expert perspectives, and personal stories that shed light on the various dimensions of mental wellness. Whether you're seeking guidance, inspiration, or a deeper understanding of the human mind, this podcast is your space to engage, learn, and navigate the journey to a happier, healthier self. If you're new to the channel, please like this video and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so that you don't miss out on any of the topics that we discuss. So today we are talking about the subject of commitment. As
I don't want to commit.
As therapists, we run into a lot of these issues where people fail to commit to their significant other. And as Khalil and I were talking about this, and even where I've had this conversation with my sister as well, because she is also a social worker, we've had these kind of dialogues about it. And my thoughts are that when you commit to something, you are sacrificing the opposite things that coincide or can be antagonistic to what you are attempting to commit to. So if you are looking to turn your life over to God, you're not going to be out here fornicating. You're not going to be out here lying, cheating, stealing.
Right.
You're not going to be entertaining things of the flesh. You're going to be only entertaining things of the spirit. If you're trying to commit to living a healthier lifestyle, you're not going to be drinking alcohol. You're not going to be smoking. You're not going to be doing drugs. You're going to get adequate rest, eating healthier foods, drinking more water, staying hydrated, making more mindful decisions regarding your physical upkeep. So when it comes to relationships, a lot of us struggle with committing in relationships because we are still attached to the things that we're used to, the things that we're comfortable with, the people that we're used to, the relationships, the entanglements that we're comfortable with or that we're used to. We're not willing to sacrifice those things. And then also, we're also not willing to, as Khalil and I have talked about this years ago, we're also not willing to shift the mindset from being a individual or personal or selfish mindset to a more collectivist, team-oriented mindset. Right. Which again causes us to have, with those things being diametrically opposed, it causes your relationships to not be fruitful, to not be growth filled, and to not help you be the best version of yourself. So what do you think about that, Khalil?
Right. And I agree with everything you said. Let's expand, because we were talking about this earlier, right? Commitment. If you're in a committed relationship, right, the word commitment is the same thing as you taking on a responsibility, right? But this is the problem that I think people forget when they hear, I want to be in a committed relationship, especially if you're, your girlfriend, your boyfriend or something is talking about being in a committed relationship. It's a lot deeper than just saying we go together, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, a commitment is is someone who's dedicated to a cause, an engagement, or an obligation that restricts freedom or action. That's the Webster's dictionary, right? So I want people to think about that. They're saying, once I commit and I'm dedicated to this cause of us two being together, right? That means I have an obligation that restricts freedom, all right, of action.
Mm-hmm.
Do you all get that? That means I'm restricted. I cannot do anything without that person who I'm committed with. I can't just go on and say, hey, I'm gonna go hang out with my homegirl up the street. We've been friends for a long time, without telling my partner. I can't just go out and hang out with my homeboys at the bar without telling my spouse or inviting my spouse or inviting my girlfriend, regardless, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it restricted my freedom. I can't move how I used to move, right? Some of the synonyms, right? When we talk about it, dedication, devotion, right? Responsibility, burden, and pressure are synonyms, meaning they're similar to the word commitment. I don't think people think about that. There's a pressure to be in this relationship and not do what you want to do. Moving without your other half or your partner, like I said, it is a part of being in a commitment. And being in a commitment, you cannot move without that partner or spouse or better half. You can't make any decisions without them once you commit. So I know I just got everybody confused, but I'm gonna run that back for you. I'm gonna run it back for you. I'm gonna run it back for you just like Emmett Smith. That might be too old school to use. I'm gonna run it back like, you know what I mean? Come on now. Look, um, once we get in a committed relationship, that means my movements are restricted. I have a responsibility to my partner, my spouse. Remember, we say collectivism, moving like a team, right? I have a burden and I have a pressure to move and not make a move without that person, right? I have to move with them and not make moves without them. That's my burden and pressure, because naturally we're selfish. We're human beings. Well, I want this or I want that.
Mm-hmm.
Before I say that, I've got to run it by my partner. That's what commitment means. People don't get that. And I had a guy, I was doing private practice with a gentleman, and you know what? I had to really give him applause. I had to give him his flowers, because he said, I already told the female I'm with, I can't make a commitment because I don't know if I can have that amount of pressure on me. You get what I'm saying? It was amazing, RJ, because I had to respect it. I said, you know what? At least you're being honest and upfront. I don't know if I can commit yet. He said, I don't really know what the problem is, but I've had some bad relationships in the past, and we reviewed those and we went through some of the things that he grew up watching, right? And it impacted his thinking patterns, and he was very untrustful of his partners,
Mm-hmm.
especially these women who had been with in long relationships previously that had broken his trust, right? So the new one had to suffer. So we talked about that and letting go of the past and staying present and judging that person on their body of work and not
Yep.
the older person who you were with in the past, because that's not staying present, right?
Mm-mm. They
We
can't pay
can't
for the
judge.
meal, a meal they didn't eat.
They exactly, right? Because they didn't do none of those things the other person did, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we went through that, and at the end he said, well, it's on me now to make a choice. He looked at the positives and negatives, the pros and the cons, and he said, you know, thank you for showing me some of this, some of these behavior patterns I've been doing. And I'm glad that I didn't commit because I knew I wasn't ready yet. He still had thoughts about another young lady who he used to mess with, which is his baby mother. He
Mm-hmm.
knew better. He knew better. He said, because if I jump out there, I've made a commitment and then I'll go against my word. And I don't want to be a man that breaks his word. Come on now.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, like I said, it's one of those things, as we've talked about in previous episodes, about open communication.
Right.
There has to be a conversation of why it's important for us to commit to one another, or if we're not at the point to where we can commit to one another. But as I've spoken about on previous episodes about intentionality and purpose,
Yes.
everything after you get past a certain age, we'll say the age of 24, 25, that's when a lot of people start making grown-up decisions. That's when most people start buying, getting their very first, their very first job, buying their very first car that they bought themselves. Some people starting a family and things of that nature. When you get to 24, 25, that's when everything that you should do should have some sort of intentionality and purpose behind it. If you're out here just moving and grooving with no
Right.
intentionality and purpose, you're setting yourself up for failure. So when you are entertaining other individuals and you have no intention or any purpose behind you entertaining them other than to get the goods, or to, as Khalil and I were talking about before we started recording, we want to get to the relations but then don't want to have the relationships. So
Exactly.
I want to get to the knocking the boots, cranking the steaky leg on somebody, jumping off the dresser on somebody, making the beast of two backs. But then I'm not doing the things necessary outside of that, because once the newness of the sex wears off,
Right.
the newness of it wears off, what do you have after that?
Right.
And that's where we do a lot of things that are intentional and purposeful in regards to having a relationship, except for we're not starting off at the right place at the right time. We fast forward through different phases of the operation. So we rush through the getting to know the person, deciding, hey, are we together? Are we not together? If we together, that means that you can't be with nobody else. That means that I can't be with nobody else. We rush past those conversations. So then when you get an inkling, your spidey sense gets to tingling, and you pick up their phone one day, or you happen to look down at their phone and you seeing that they texting with somebody else, or they're talking to somebody else on social media, now your feelings are hurt. But did we really have those conversations in regards to we are locked in with each other? We're tapped in with each other. It ain't nobody else. It's just you and I.
Right.
Did we have those conversations? Because ultimately, when we fail to have those conversations, we set ourselves up for failure. And then it starts to impact trust and stability in whatever you got going on.
Right.
Because now someone's in their feelings because I feel like you played with me. And like Khalil and I were talking about the show Love After Lockup. You know, I like watching the show as a therapist to see how other people live, to see how other people process different things, and how they navigate.
Show if you ain't watched it.
Yeah, it's a crazy show if you ain't watch it. So this particular season, there's a couple that's on there, Demondrick and Kiana. And so Demondrick has a baby mama that he has 2 kids with named Joella. So he can't leave either one of them alone. So he has cheated on Kiana several times with Joella. He continues to go over, he has to lie about where he's going to go sneak over there to Joella's house to go spend time with his kids. And then, of course, they're having inappropriate conversations. There's loose boundaries turning into no boundaries. And then next you know, they're doing something they ain't got no business doing, having conversations they shouldn't be having it. And so, like I was telling Khalil, when you are looking at their relationship from the outside in, and you're just looking at it, you're observing it as we are as the audience, you see where both of these young ladies are expecting a commitment. And because they are expecting a commitment, and they're not having the conversations of what are we doing? What are you doing? What are your thoughts on this? He's just out here moving and grooving, and he's playing with both of your lives. Because I guarantee you, he's probably out here sleeping with both of you at the same time with no protection. And so he's doing very intentional acts, but is not making the intentional step of choosing one of you. But then also to take it a step further, as the young ladies in the situation, at some point in time, you have to choose you. You can't be too preoccupied with being chosen and you don't choose yourself. Because by not choosing yourself, you are allowing this man to continue to play with your feelings, to continue to smash your expectations, and to continue to disappoint you. Because like this last episode, he goes over to the house and he tells Joella like him and Kiana got engaged. So you could see it in Joella's face, like her feelings was hurt. Like, oh my God, I can't believe, you could see it in her face. Like, dang, this man, we got kids together. And so he's asking her certain things. And so she's like, I kind of feel like I got played. And so he's like, well, oh, so now you saying you got played? Sir, you played with her. You're sleeping with her, but then you going back home to Kiana. When you and Kiana get into it, where you back at? You back at her house again. So you're playing with her. You're getting all the benefits of a committed relationship, but you're not committing to either one of them. And that's where at some point in time,
that's what we call that.
He's getting his cake and he's eating it too. But where it becomes frustrating is the fact that at some point in time, somebody has to choose themselves and say, hey, you can't come back over here. This is dead. Either I'm playing first string and only string, or I don't play on this team at all. And so when you are in a committed monogamous relationship, you are putting those boundaries up there, and you are letting people know I'm either playing first string and only string, or we can't be on the same team.
Right.
Because as people have to learn, and I have to tell this to my clients all the time. People treat you the way you teach people how to treat you. True. And people treat you the way you allow them to treat you. So if you allow people to walk all over you, you allow people to play with your feelings, you allow people to take you for granted, you allow people to take your kindness for weakness, to just run all over your feelings, stomp on your heart, guess what? People are going to continue to do that. At some point in time, you got to choose yourself and say, hey, my peace is far more important than any relationship that I'm in.
Right.
It's priceless. And go ahead.
Yeah. And I hated to interrupt, but, Unique always talks about this. those young ladies that are involved in this, and even the young man, she always talks about that. If you don't have any boundaries, this stuff seems awkward to even make a decision to say, hey, oh, I need to choose myself, right? If you've never had boundaries, this is the scariest thing about boundaries, right? Especially I've worked with kids and I saw they didn't have it, right? And then, you meet their parents, see their parents don't have it. No one was ever taught these boundaries. It's scary because shoot, that means, hey, if you're thinking, hey, I can do anything, you know what I'm saying? And then the people who are with you can do anything, then there'll be numerous violations that start to happen, right? Who's going to stop one another from doing certain things that violate? That scares me because you're
Yeah.
putting yourself in jeopardy. The other person's in jeopardy. Anybody you meet and bring into your circle are in jeopardy. And people don't even understand. There's a lot of different types of boundaries, right? We're not just talking about sexual and physical boundaries, right? There's time boundaries, emotional boundaries, right? Intellectual boundaries, right? There's so many different types, right? Boundaries with material things, your personal belongings, right? There's so many different types of boundaries. And when we start talking about someone who's allowing another person to dictate how a relationship goes, all right, when you know that, hey, he has several other people or she has several other people and it's okay, that means there's a lack of boundaries on both sides.
Yeah. And
it's very unhealthy.
As we've talked about in previous episodes, loose boundaries turn into no boundaries. You start having problems. It's very important that when you are sitting down having these conversations about what type of relationship you are trying to have, that you are outlining boundaries, because boundaries need to be in place for the commitment to be healthy.
Right.
If there's no boundaries in place, the commitment's not going to be healthy. It's not built on a solid foundation. So It's like a house built on a foundation of sand. It's going to shift and slide and roll over, and next thing you know, your house is going to be upside down. And so you have to outline from the very beginning the expectations, the boundaries, what you're going for, what you're not going for. Also, you have to be willing to receive what the other person's not going for and what they're expecting, because that allows you to ensure that you guys are aligned and going in the same direction at the same time, versus they're wanting something, you're wanting something completely different, and then you guys grow apart, because that's what's going to happen. So when you are getting, say, like I said, you're in a serious relationship, there should be conversations about, does anybody want to have kids? How do you feel about kids? What is your religious preference? What is your credit score? How do you feel about family? Like if my family was to come over, would it be okay that they stay for a couple of days, or can they stay a couple of weeks? Like, these are questions that we need to be having if we're going to be in a committed relationship, because again, these are small things in the grand scheme of things, but these small things they're like links in a chain. They feed into something else and feed into something else and feed into something else. So they can start off as small conversations, which then turn into big arguments and relationship ending confrontations, because we didn't lay out the expectations and establish boundaries from the very beginning. Because I'm a very private person. I don't want everybody in my business. So if I'm dating a young lady and her mama stay in our business, sis, you and your mama can get out.
Right.
Like, I'm just so, but again, I can't hold you accountable for something that you didn't know was a problem for me from the very beginning. You're not a mind reader. So that's where communication has to be a key pillar in your relationships to go along with the commitment.
And without the open communication, right? And if I'm hiding things from my partner, right, that means I'm no longer in a committed relationship. We heard the definition earlier, right? The freedom, all right, the freedom is restricted to do the things that you want to do, right? You can't have access to everything if you're in a committed relationship, right? I know we could even talk about swingers, right? I used to think swingers were people who could not commit. But the funniest thing about that is they are on the same page, right? They're saying, hey, we don't want any sexual boundaries in our relationship. We're open sexually. And this is going to keep the relationship healthy, right? And they decided on that. The ones who don't decide on it, yeah, there's some issues there, because then we got somebody being dominated or somebody being coerced. But the ones that are working together, right, who are in that swingers community, they're saying there is no sexual boundaries here. We're okay. They might have some, right? But we're okay with doing this lifestyle. And we've agreed to continue the commitment with this exception with the sexual
Mm-hmm.
boundary, right?
Yep.
And so if you all were going to do what you're doing and have that type of open communication and discussion, then then there's no problem. But you're not. You're going behind each other's backs. You're promising someone something that gives them false hopes and expectations that you can't meet, right? And that creates the chaos. That creates more problems. So then we notice, guess what? You really don't have any boundaries because at this point you're manipulating.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, the thing about it though is like you talked about this before in a previous episode about people just yes ma'am and yes sir and you all day,
Right.
but then their
All day.
actions don't match up with their words.
Yeah, I
When
got you.
when it comes to strong commitments, there are things that should be, just shown to you. Like if a person's actions do not match their words, it's baby back bullshit. That's just what it is.
Right.
Like me and my sister Anna, we were watching a show called Love is Blind. It's on Netflix, where couples, it's a dating show where couples don't get a chance to see each other. They're talking to each other through a wall, through like a screen. And then at the end of the show, they choose each other and then they go live with each other and then they get married. So this one couple, they get all the way down the aisle, they get married. So you can tell from watching on the show, the young lady, she had a lot of like emotional problems in regards to, well, emotional issues in regards to just anxiety, also some self-worth issues and things of that nature. So her husband, she didn't work. The guy she married, he was a barber, he was a bartender, he was some other things too. Every time, and to his credit, like every time she came to him, he auto corrected. She only needed to have a conversation with him one time.
Wow.
That's how committed he was to her. When she said, "Hey, I don't like that you go hang out with your friends all night," he stopped. He didn't argue. He didn't say, "I need some me time." He didn't offer her no excuses. He immediately stopped.
Right.
When she said, "Hey, I don't like that you drink a whole lot," immediately stopped. He didn't give no pushback. And like I told Anna, I said, "See that right there? That's a real one right there." I said, because he received what she said.
Yeah.
And he immediately adjusted fire based off of what she responded to him with. Now, eventually they ended up going their separate ways because it was getting too much. But again, he was committed to being the best husband that he could be to that young lady. And so, granted, they didn't work out, but I will say, every time she came to him with a perceived issue on her end, he didn't give no pushback. He was committed to being the best husband. The vows that he took with her, the things that he said to her when they were getting to know each other through the wall, he stood 10 toes down on that business. And so for me as a therapist, I love to see that. I love to see where people take their vows in marriage, their vows and their commitment in a relationship seriously. Because for a lot of us, especially in today's society, our words are not worth wet toilet paper. We will say one thing and then do something completely opposite of that. We will say I love you, but then I'm out here, I can't keep my hands to myself. I can't keep my eyes to myself. I'm out here looking at this one, I'm ogling that one, but I'm hollering on this one. I'm in somebody else DMs on Instagram, TikTok, and on Twitter. But I love you though. That's not love at that point. That is emotional manipulation. And so to see someone walk out everything that they said or everything that they received from their partner, that is what strong commitments look like. Because a person who is committed to you will do everything necessary to at least attempt to hit your expectations. They will put forth the effort. Now, conversely, as a person who is relaying information to the other person about expectations, people have to realize expectations have to be realistic and they have to be feasible. Expecting someone to immediately, abruptly change their whole life around because of certain things, again, you got to extend some grace and mercy. We got to extend some grace and mercy. I'm not expecting someone to immediately, like if I'm a person that doesn't smoke, I can't say, "Hey, you got to stop smoking if you're going to be with me." Now, would I like you to not smoke in my presence? Yes, that's fair. Would I like you to not smoke in the car while I'm in the car? Yes, that's fair. Would I like you to not smoke in the house while I'm in the house? Yes, that's fair. Can you smoke outside or smoke in your car and not smoke in my car, not smoke in my presence? Those are all things that you can do to accommodate the fact that, hey, I'm not a smoker.
Yeah.
But to say, hey, you've been smoking for 10 plus years, you got to stop today, that's not realistic or feasible. And so, again, that is where you will get pushback when the expectation or the boundary that you are setting for the commitment is not realistic or feasible. Too often, we come into these new relationships, and it's no different than getting a job.
Right.
When you start a new job for a new company, you don't come into the company and expect the company to change for you. There's a company culture that you have to adjust.
Right. You got to adjust to the culture.
Exactly.
Right?
So I'm not saying that you can't sit down and have that conversation with your significant other and say, hey, there's certain things like, being at the club all the time. Like, she came to him respectfully. Hey, I don't like the fact that, you work all the time. And then when you're not working, you're hanging out with your friends. It doesn't really leave us any time for quality time. That's what she said to him. He said you could see him receive it, because people, and this is something that
he didn't want to process it.
No, he processed it. He received it. He processed and he executed. See, there's a difference between listening and hearing. When you are listening to someone, you are taking in what they are saying. You are looking for an opportunity to overtalk them. You're looking for an opportunity to disprove them. You're looking for an opportunity to discredit them, devalue what they're saying, argue a point. Whereas when you're hearing someone, you're taking in what they're saying and you're looking at ways in which you can apply it. That is what that young man did. He received what she said, took it in, and applied that shit. And so for a lot of us, both men and women, we refuse to do that. And that's where, like, when we have things like my next point about challenges when it comes to commitments, right?
Mm-hmm.
The main challenges that a lot of us have is the fact that we don't want to sacrifice anything. Like, and I was having this conversation with Anna, because, whenever I have the idea about, talking about certain topics, I'll talk it out with Khalil. I'll talk it out with my sister. I'll talk it out with Unique, and we'll kind of like talk about it, and it gives me different ideas and a different perspective on certain things. But like I was telling Anna, when a challenge to commitment is the unwillingness to sacrifice.
Right.
A lot of us, I've been living this way for so long, I'm not willing to change anything.
Change how I've been living.
Right. Like we talked about this in a previous episode, where my phone, every time I go somewhere, I get up and my phone go with me. If you can't let your significant other have your phone or know the password to your phone, that's a problem. Like, my guy, if you're out here swapping bodily fluids, but a person can't look through your phone, what type of relationship are we in?
Right. Now, the issue I have with, because I'm one of those people should have their boundaries, right? But like you said, I should have the passcode, because there's times where my wife forgets her phone or I forget my phone and she says, hey, use mine because I had to make a call, or I had to check in for the restaurant and I didn't have my phone, or my phone was almost out of batteries, and we use each other's phones. But my wife, and she knows the password. I don't change nothing because ain't nothing in there. You ain't catching me doing nothing crazy because I know better. I'm in a commitment, and I don't feel like going through that. I've been through that before in my life. No thanks. No thanks. Right? So she can use my phone. But what I'm saying is there's still boundaries. She don't need to be snooping through my phone. She can use my phone. She can, if she says, hey, let me see some pictures or whatever. Because there's times where I'm the only phone taking pictures or whatever that is when we went out and stuff like that. Yeah, but people shouldn't be snooping through their spouse's phone unless they have suspicion. Now, if you're just doing that because that's your habit, you need to break that habit. You know what I mean? Because if you have an open and honest and committed relationship, there shouldn't be any reason for you to go through someone's phone.
There should be no secrets. I mean, the thing about it though is like I say this all the time on here, and you guys always laugh when I say this, but I'm lazy. I'm very lazy. I am not attempting. I'm not doing anything that is going to require a whole bunch of extra work and effort. So when you're having to lie, bro, I ain't got time. When I'm having to sneak, I'm too old and I ain't got time. When I'm having to come up with a lie, to cover the lie, to make up for a third lie, I ain't got time because I'm not going to keep track of it. I got a million things to keep track of. So when it comes to the challenges that you're going to run into when it comes to your commitment, it's the sacrifice of, as I said earlier at the top of the episode, of being willing to die to certain things. Certain things in you have to die in order for you to commit to something else. So I can't say I want to turn my life over to God, but I'm still living by the flesh. You know, it's sundress season right now. Every time somebody with a sundress come by and I'm out here, I'm looking hard.
Look.
Listen, I'm not moving the way I'm supposed to be moving, because a woman with a very shapely woman in a sundress walks by, it don't even faze me.
Now you looking like a pervert out there.
But I'm just saying, don't try to play like you ain't got eyes. I got full of them, so I can see very well. So it's one of those things where in order to commit to things, you have to be willing to die to other things. Things that are diametrically opposed to what you are trying to commit to, they have to go or they have to die, because you're not going to be successful. Nothing in life that you achieve, nothing in life that you hope to accomplish, nothing in life that you hope to be great at, because there's a difference between people who are bums, bare minimum boys, and people who are phenomenal. When you look at people like LeBron James and god dang on Zion Williamson, they're supposed to be the faces of the NBA. One is an all-star, and I mean he is playing some of the best basketball for a 40-plus-year-old man.
40,
Whereas Zion Williamson is in his early 20s, mid-20s?
Yeah, mid-20s.
And he hasn't played an entire season, his entire career. He's hitting everything but the basketball court. So, again, commitment. There's a level of commitment LeBron James is willing to put in. He puts in $1 million into his rehabilitation, recovery in the offseason. What is Zion Williamson doing?
All he's known for is having women
busting them down. That's what he's known for, is busting them down. That's what he's known for. So at the end of the day, just using that as an example, if you want to be great, there's going to be things you're going to have to give up. I'm sure LeBron James would love to be out here relaxing and chilling in his off season. But have you looked at the man? The man looks like a goddamn anime character.
Right.
At 40 years old, you don't get like that sitting on the couch.
Sitting at the house.
You don't get like that eating shit. You don't get like that by drinking alcohol all the time. You get like that because you put in the work when nobody else is watching you. You get like that when you're doing the things because they're the right thing to do, not just because someone's making you do them. So when you are looking at being the best version of yourself in regards to being in a relationship, rather that be the best boyfriend, the best, because most of us should strive to be the best spouse. That's a problem too. Because we got to stop entering into these entanglements, and the end goal ain't to be somebody's spouse. Like, we got to stop doing that. We got to stop saying, I'm cool with being somebody boo thing. What the hell is that? I'm ready. I'm okay with being somebody or somebody a little stank. But there's a difference between that's my husband and that's my boyfriend. There's a difference between that's my girlfriend and that's my wife. There's a huge difference in that.
But that's the assimilation of our culture, right? People have assimilated. When you assimilate, right, you take on the features, and the culture that we have is made up. It's not real. That's not your real culture, right? This is made up, especially when we see the things going on social media and on TV. These things are gathered from it. We've imitated all sorts of different things that we believe is a part of culture. That is not a part of the African American culture. That wasn't the original standard, right? Those things have been assimilated. We've grabbed different things and hung on to it, right? And that's from being oppressed. All right. I get it. But a lot of those things, we've decided to turn it into something positive, because notice, people mimic us. People imitate us, right?
That's true.
But a lot of the things that we were doing, right, the gang culture, right, we took that over from being in the inner cities in Detroit, Chicago, New York. We took that over. That wasn't ours. Everybody knows that. If you've done some research, go to Gangland and do research on the original people who were doing that.
The Divine Nine.
Yeah, check all that out.
The Divine Nine, yes. We couldn't be a part of anybody else, so we created our own. I mean, you are absolutely correct. I mean, it's a cross culture, right? Where you have people like Rachel Dolezal, for example, where she was out here masquerading as an African American woman.
Which is crazy.
You know, you have the Catch Me Outside, Danielle, what's her name? Danielle Bregoli, the Catch Me Outside girl.
Yeah.
You know, like, you grew up from a suburban Caucasian family, but then if people had to close their eyes and just listen to you talk, they wouldn't imagine that you are a young Caucasian girl. Or what's that one rapper?
Well, look,
Iggy Azalea.
Iggy, her.
Bruh, like, where I had no idea she was an Australian woman until she was doing an interview. And I was
from
like,
Australia, yeah.
I had to Google it because I was like,
right.
Oh, snap.
She didn't even have the little Australian / British accent, man. I didn't even really hear that until I listened to an interview.
Yes.
I thought she was from straight up America, man.
Yeah.
And so that's where I said the mimicking. But the funniest thing is we've assimilated into European culture, right? And the reason why I said the things that we've grasped onto to make ours aren't really ours. Because
absolutely,
if we go back and do our history, we were doing anything and everything. Even if you read the Frederick Douglass narratives, right? Because people's family members are being sold elsewhere when they were freed, when they were finally freed in 1865 and later, because they really weren't free in 1865 and later, a lot of the African American people were looking for their family, looking for their spouses, looking for their children, right? They were actually trying to stay together as a family, you know, and I think when we look back at where we came from and where we are now, where the households are split up and you have single parent mothers, right? That's not how it was supposed to be. Mm-hmm. And it's metamorphosis into that, right? And we can blame it on slavery, but during the 50s and 60s, we were like this. We were a nucleus, man. We were staying together. Mm-hmm. So when people feed us all this stuff that, black men can't have one woman and we got to run around and we got to do this and we got to pimp because we've been pimping. No, the pimps were the Europeans. They used to run brothels, right? You know what I'm saying? They were doing that in the Civil War. Like, where do you think you weren't the first pimp? You grabbed that, you assimilated, and you took on that culture. That's not ours. You know what I'm saying? That in Africa, I'm pretty sure they have brothels now because they're Europeanized, but they didn't have that back in the day. You know, and this is something where it hurts me to see that social media has kind of projected this as, oh, this is the culture, right? It ain't the culture. You know, the only thing that's really culturally acceptable to us as Africans, wearing jewelry. You know, you go back in times, we did have jewelry. Mm-hmm. Gold was readily available for us before it was raped and pillaged. So we did wear gold. That's one thing. I'm sorry. That is something that's cool, right? But other than that, a lot of the other stuff, we were assimilated. So we took it from the Europeans. This isn't us. We are supposed to be together in committed relationships. Yes, of course. Yes, there is some cultures from Africa that have multiple wives. And in some of the Arab cultures and different things, right? But when we talk about us as a people, a lot of people only have one wife because you can't afford to have 2 or 3.
No.
You better be able to afford it.
Exactly. I mean, and that's where, as I said before, like when it comes down to it, you have to be realistic and feasible about what is doable in your life. You know, right. We have to stop chasing things that we see on television. We got to stop chasing things that we see on social media because a lot of those people, if you had to ask them, they're miserable. When you're watching people on shows like Love After Lockup, you're just in chaotic relationship after chaotic relationship after chaotic relationship, and then you're confused why you end up in the same spots. You look at the people on Love and Hip Hop. Not many of them are married. Yep. Not many of them are married. You look at shows like Basketball Wives. How many of them, by a show of hands, are actually somebody's wife? Not many of them. Most of them were a girlfriend.
That it's called Basketball Wives.
Like out of everybody on the show, maybe 2 or 3 of them each season are actually married or were married to somebody. Most of them were somebody's girlfriend or somebody's situationship.
Yep.
Because you look at like Evelyn Lozada, she was like, dealing with this person to deal with that person, hooking up with that person. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's not a knock on her. But again, when we're out here just moving and grooving with no intentionality, no purpose, we find ourselves resorting to things that we are comfortable with doing. And what's comfortable for a lot of us is the easy stuff. It's hard to say, hey, I'm going to get my shit together. You're going to get your shit together. And together we're going to form Voltron.
Yeah.
We're going to form the Megazord and we're going to go out here and fight monsters. We're going to take on the world. Because people talk about relationship goals. They talk about couple goals.
Right.
They talk about being a power couple. But in order to be a power couple, you got to be looking at how that power couple got to that point. Because nobody who has walked the face of this earth did not face any trials or tribulations.
Right.
But with those power couples, those couples that we look at as couple goals, you know, the difference between them and everyone else is the fact that they face their trials, their tribulations as a unified front.
Together.
That is what a commitment is. A commitment is saying that, hey, I'm choosing you, you're choosing me. Together, we may not always like each other all the time. We may not always get along all the time. But we're going to respect the fuck out of each other. We're going to love the hell out of each other. And together, we're going to combat the world. We're going to fight anything that comes in front of us. You know, because at the end of the day, that's the only way that a relationship is going to work. That's the only way that a relationship is going to thrive. When you are looking at these relationships that stand the test of time, again, like we talk about President Obama and former First Lady Michelle, we talk about them being relationship goals. I guarantee you they didn't not argue. I guarantee you they didn't not disagree about things.
Right.
But guess what? They're able to speak to each other in a respectful manner. They got really good at having tough conversations respectfully. Mm-hmm. That's how relationships are supposed to work. We don't have to like each other all the time. We don't got to agree with each other all the time. But because I'm choosing you and you're choosing me, you're my person, I'm your person. You know, there's just certain ways I'm not going to talk to you. And I mean, for me as a man, when I'm in a relationship with somebody, with a young lady, there's ways I'm not going to treat you. There's ways I'm not going to talk to you. Because again, I'm choosing you, you're choosing me. So we will sit down and have those conversations. Beloved, hey, listen, we're not going to do all that.
Right. Hey, beloved.
Why are we
beloved? You know what it is.
Why are we yelling? Why are we yelling? Why are we cussing each other? Like, how does that help us? How does that improve our, because the thing about it though is everything that we should be doing together should be geared towards elevating us. How does that improve our love? How does that make me receive what you're saying any better? How does that make me yelling at you? How does that make you receive what I'm saying to you any better? Commitment doesn't need to be viewed as jail, because again, that's what a lot of people view it as. They view commitment as being locked down. I got leg irons on. I got hand irons on. I'm singing the Akon song that came out in the early 2000s. We view it as that. But again, when you look at what commitment is supposed to do, commitment is a beautiful thing. There are beautiful things that come from commitment. You look at, again, like going back to President Obama and former First Lady Michelle, he ascended to the highest position in the land, with a partner by his side.
Right.
Where you didn't see him without seeing her. You didn't see her without seeing him. They were collectively always tapped in. That is what having a solid commitment looks like, because again, they covered each other's strength. They built on each other's strengths, and then they also covered for each other's weaknesses. Right. That is what being a part of a solid commitment is. It's a part of being part of a dynasty championship level team. Like we talk about the Bulls in the 90s or the Lakers in the late 2000s with Shaq and Kobe.
That teamwork, right? That teamwork. Because Shaq and Kobe didn't even like each other. People don't know that. Shaq talks about that. They had fallouts. Mm-hmm. But remember, we said in commitment, right? You're committed to a cause, right? Mm-hmm. An obligation, right? And so your movement is restricted, right? But it isn't jail, because you can always leave. But once you make that commitment, if you say, hey, this is what I'm going to do, just like the Obamas, right? They were dedicated to that cause, getting to that White House.
Absolutely.
You get what I'm saying? And she knew, right? And I'm pretty sure she's probably stressed out from a lot of the stuff she had to go through. But she knew in order to support that cause, hey, I'm down for the cause, you're going to have to ride with them. Mm-hmm. And not too many people want to ride with you for real.
Everyone says they're ride or die until it's time to do some riding and it's time to do some dying.
Hey, look, the next, they switch up like my man in what's the old school movie with Ice Cube in them
Yeah.
when he was about to ride out and oh man, I can't even, what in the world is the movie where he had to hop out, he couldn't ride,
Yeah,
right?
I mean everybody says that. I mean, my man DJ Academic said it best. Most people are as loyal as the last time you fed them.
Exactly.
And for a lot of us, we have to start reevaluating the people who are surrounding us, people that we are committing ourselves to. Because again, if the person does not value you as much as you value them, then we might need to reevaluate our commitment to that person. Because
Right.
it should be an equal exchange of ideas, an equal exchange of effort, an equal exchange of consistency, an equal exchange of energies.
Right. Right.
Something else that has to occur as well, because it just occurred to me, something else that has to occur is you guys have to stay tapped in with each other. At some point in time, periodically, you should be checking in with your partner to ensure that you're still aligned, that your
Right.
commitment, that
You're
the
still
things
dedicated.
that you're still dedicated, that are there things that might need to be readjusted, things that might need to be realigned. I mean, it's no
Right.
different than like with your car. Periodically, you're gonna have to get tune-ups. You're gonna have to get oil changes. You're gonna have to change the tires out. You have to put brakes on there. Your relationships are the same way. They need periodic maintenance. They need periodic, diagnostic checks to ensure
Mhm.
that it's operating at peak efficiency. The common mistake that I've seen in today's relationships is we get comfortable.
Real
We
comfortable.
get comfortable, and because we get comfortable, we get lazy and we get complacent. And the problem with being comfortable, complacent, and lazy is the fact that we start to take the other person for granted. I think that you always gonna be there. Where your ass going?
Right. Right.
You ain't going nowhere. So I can just be me. I can just be lazy. I can talk to you crazy. I
Anytime,
cannot.
anyhow, right?
I can come in the house anytime I want to. I could be doing what I want to do because you ain't going nowhere. We done been together for 10 years.
Now look, that's someone who's abusing,
Hmm?
all right, the commitment. Because now that you're committed and I know you're not going anywhere, right? I can do what I want now. Like I said in the commitment, right? It restricts your movements, right? But it doesn't lock you up. You still have free will. People can always do what they want to do, right? And if someone's going to do that, that means they're looking for a loophole. They're looking for a way to manipulate, a way to get over. That means that you missed something in the courting phase. Remember, we were talking about being in that courting phase a few months ago. We talked about that. I'm missing something. There's something that when we were communicating, all right, there's something you didn't want to tell me, right? Because if you're going to treat me like that once I'm committed, right, and then you want to do whatever you want to do, then we miss something because we're not on the same page. There's something
Absolutely.
we miss.
Absolutely. I mean, those are things where, as I said before, you have to kind of start to reevaluate your relationship. I say every 6 months or so, you need to kind
Right,
of sit down and physically have that conversation with your partner to ensure that you're still committed to the same goals. You're still committed to the same purpose. You're still envisioning going in the same direction. But also at the same time, you have to lead and begin the relationship with those type of conversations, because
right.
you can't change the dynamic of the relationship halfway through the game. You can't change the rules
Yeah,
up
now
halfway
I
through the
don't like
game.
that. I don't like
Now,
that no more.
now I like that. Now it's a problem. It wasn't a problem when you got with me. It's no different than like where when I was watching, like when I was, and I probably shouldn't have been watching this when I was a kid.
What are you watching?
Players Club with
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah,
Lisa Ray and Ice Cube
yeah,
and
yeah.
Bernie Mac.
Oh, and the old Ice Cube
Yeah,
video movie I was talking about earlier was Boys in the Hood when Trey
yeah.
didn't want to ride. Yeah, that's what I was talking
So
about. Ice Cube everywhere.
her Lisa Ray's character, of course, she's stripping to pay for her college, pay her tuition through college, and so
Man,
she
that's
meets a
crazy.
guy at the club. He doesn't want her stripping anymore. One of the things
Right.
that she responded with was, "Well, you met me at the club. You knew
Yeah,
what I
that's
was
where I
doing when
was.
you met
Yeah,
me."
right.
So that's where you got to have those conversations from the very beginning to outline expectations to ensure that we're moving in the same direction. So for me, when I'm engaging, talking, courting somebody, I tell them from the very beginning, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking to move towards marriage. If you're not looking to get married, then don't wait. I'm not going to waste your time. Let me not waste yours. Because some
Right.
people they just looking to hook up. That's not the type of time I'm on. So if that's what you're looking for, then you go over here, I'm gonna go over here.
Right.
But when you're not having those conversations, you can't then feel some type of way or feel disappointed when you never even led with that. So that's where, again, you start off with those type of conversations. You periodically, as the relationship matures and it grows, you continue to have those conversations to ensure that you guys are continuing to move in a shared direction. Because
Right.
that's ultimately, as I said before, with a relationship, your end state goal should be working towards being someone's spouse. Who wants to be somebody's girlfriend or
Girlfriend for
boyfriend
the rest of their
for
time. Right.
for 20 years? Who want that? You just a friend at that point. You a friend. You a friend with benefits. Versus
Homie.
it hits different when you're somebody's husband, you're somebody's wife. People are content with being somebody's baby mama, baby daddy. They hooking up, buddy. They sneaky link. People are okay with that instead of standing on business and being okay with, excuse me, doing the things necessary to get married, doing things necessary to do things the right way. Because again, we see in today's society, we see where doing the things the wrong way gets people. You're out here hooking up with no real commitments. You're creating, you're doing very intentional acts. Like Dr. Bryant talked about that with Cam Newton, and me and Unique talked about that on the episode, where you're doing very intentional things, like you're having sex without protection.
Right. And that's intentional.
That's intentional. You made a conscious decision to not hold on. Wait a second. Let me go on over here. Let me reach in the dresser drawer. Let me pop my wallet open. Let me reach in my pocket, put a condom on, and then we go into town. No, you're making very intentional decisions to have unprotected sex with these different individuals. You then bring life into this world, knowing that you're one man, and being one man, you can't be in 8 different directions at the same time. So what ends up happening is you create these uneven relationships because children do not understand that you're one dad and there's 8 of us, or there's 6 of us, or there's 5 of us, or there's 15 of us. What they see is, I needed my dad to be there, and guess what? You weren't there.
Right.
They don't understand the gray areas. Children are very black or white. You're either with me or you're against me. And so for a lot of us, again, just using that as an example, we make a lot of intentional acts, not realizing first, second, third order effects that come along with making those very intentional acts. That's where, as I said before, I'm a very thoughtful person. So for me, just using me as an example, for me, being a man and being in relationships with individuals, I will sit down and we will have these conversations so that we are on the same page. We are singing the same song. We are moving in the same direction. So there's no confusion. There's no chaos. There's no calamity because, again, your boy right here with the glasses, I am exceedingly lazy. And I ain't got time to be arguing with somebody about something that we done talked about already.
Right.
I'm not.
We went through that 2-3 times.
We done revisited that already. We done talked about that already. So when we talked about it, you said you were okay with it. So now all of a sudden, now we're not okay with it. Well, let's sit down and let's unpack that. So again, when you are having those solid, open conversations, honest conversations, because that's key word, honest conversation from the very beginning, you don't find yourself arguing, debating, not knowing what type of relationship this is. You're not confused about why this person is still doing this and I thought we were doing that. You're not confused. You're not, all over the place. You know where you're going. You know what to expect. You know the direction you're driving or you're headed in versus just drifting and hoping that things work out for the best.
Right. Well, look, if there's a commitment, there shouldn't be any confusion. There shouldn't be any lack of
dialogue, communication.
Or communication. These things, man, we should be moving, especially once I make a commitment. We should be moving as one. And that's where I was saying there's an obligation once you make that commitment to always have that person on the same page. Even if you, man, because there's still freedom to do some things, right? Like, come on, me starting my private practice, right? I got a lot of things I got to do. My wife, I had to include her on certain things that I'm doing, right? I'm like, look, man, in order to open this business, I had to go ahead and file for my business license. I had to do this, that, and the third. There's certain things I had to do. And I had to explain it to her because I want her on the same page. And it's not like she didn't know I was going to do this. She works 5 days a week, right? And I work 4 days a week technically. So for me, I have 10-hour days. So boom, I'm running. I'm doing everything I need to do And when I lose communication with her and she falls behind or she's confused, I got to catch her up. That's my duty because I'm in a committed relationship. I got to catch her up to speed. This is what I've been doing on my Fridays off. You get what I'm saying? Like I had to explain that to her because, she was lost. And that's not fair to her. That's on me.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing goes for anybody when you're in a committed relationship. People should not be moving blindly. All right. You should have already told them, yeah, I'm moving like this and this is what I'm doing. And if we can't get on the same page, I'm going left, you go right. And you don't hold people hostage. That's one of the things that I don't like that I see sometimes. You're holding someone hostage if you're promising them and they have this, you promising them to meet these certain needs that they want met, and you're not going to do it. That's holding someone hostage.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very important to understand that healthy commitment is rooted in clarity, it's rooted in communication, and most importantly, it's rooted in choice. People have
Right.
free will, and so a healthy commitment is not one where a person is locked in. This isn't jail. This isn't, you're in a maximum security prison. It's not about being perfect, but it's about being present. As Khalil alluded to earlier, you have to be very present in the relationship. By being present and being mindful in the relationship, key word here, mindful, being focused on the present right now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but right now, because you can't change what happened yesterday. And you sure as hell don't have no control over the future. You have control over what's going on right now.
What's going on right
So
now?
by being present, it keeps you from continuing to make the same mistakes over and over and over again. Because I'm a firm believer that after a certain amount of time, it stops being a mistake. It's now a choice. It then it then grows into a lifestyle at that point.
Right.
And so for a lot of us, the mistake that we make is that we think that we got to be perfect. We think that everything's got to be right all the time. We're human beings. We're not infallible. We mess up and mess up majorly.
Right.
And that's where, as I said before, grace and mercy. If you love somebody and you care about somebody, extend them grace and mercy, because there's going to be times where you're going to fall short. There's going to be times you're not going to be hitting at 100%. There's going to be times where, again, you fall short on, because people seem to think that relationships are 50-50. They're not. They're 100-100.
Right.
Anybody who tells you their relationship is 50-50, they are teaching you codependency. Because
Right.
if that other person happens to, God forbid, get raptured to heaven, called to the upper room, sucked into hell,
Yeah,
or
happens to them, they get an accident, they're in the hospital, regardless, right?
Yeah, they just decide, I don't want you no more.
Right.
They decide they don't want you. I don't want you no more. Guess what? You're not stuck in a bond, because your 50 plus their 50 equal the whole.
Right.
You come in with 100, they come in with 100. So if anything happens to them, you can still carry on. You're not in a bad spot. And so for a lot of us, we get taught these maladaptive lessons. We learn them, or we, as Khalil alluded to, we assimilate them. And then we learn wrong, so then we execute wrong, and then happenstancely we teach incorrectly, because most of us will reproduce at some point in time. And when we learn things wrong, we saw things wrong, we then pass that on to our children, they do things wrong. And then it just perpetuates the generational curse known as maladaptive relationships or toxic relationships.
Man, before we close out, RJ,
Mm-hmm.
I do want to I want to go back and let people know, right? If you're in a committed relationship, because we talked about this several times in some of the older episodes, if you're in a committed relationship, right, the relationship has to bear fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Just like a person who's working on their spiritual conditioning, right? They're working on themselves personally, right? They're trying to establish a better education, increasing their worth monetarily. They're doing things. If you're in a committed relationship, you guys should start bearing some fruit. One of the things that encouraged me to get married with my fiance before we even made that commitment for her to become my fiance is when we were together, we started bearing fruit.
Mm-hmm.
Good things, positive things, healthy things were developing between us. And we started to see, hey, we work well together. things, we are accomplishing things together. We're encouraging one another to accomplish things, right? And then when we got married, we went from renting a house to owning a house, right? Having multiple cars, being able to finance these things without being in tremendous amount of debt, because I had student loans, so I couldn't be in tremendous debt, but working together in order to do that. A good relationship that's committed bears fruit. That's what I wanted to say before we go.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I definitely like that. I like that, because again, for a lot of us, the thing that we struggle with is we romanticize things.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves the question, are we committed to a person, a version of them, or an idea of them?
Yeah. Idealized.
And
Yeah.
and I talked about that in one of our most recent episodes about romanticizing the bad. We romanticize, we remember the good, but then we romanticize over the bad. And so, as Khalil alluded to, your commitments should bear fruit of some kind. If it's healthy, it's going to bear fruit. No different than a tree, no different than a plant that produces some sort of fruit or some sort of vegetable. If a tomato plant is healthy, it's going to produce tomatoes, healthy tomatoes,
Right.
Big, ripe tomatoes. If a watermelon vine is healthy, it's going to produce giant, sweet watermelons. If an apple tree is healthy, it's going to produce giant red or green, yellow, whatever, sweet apples. It's going to do, if something is healthy, it's going to produce the fruit. It's going to show you the proof. And for a lot of us, we have to recognize, am I romanticizing, am I romanticizing the bad parts? Or is this relationship healthy for me? Is it producing fruit in my life? Is it pushing me? Because you'll hear me talk about this a lot. Is it pushing me to be the best version of myself?
Right.
And if it's not, respectfully, I got to go. Because if it's not adding and multiplying in your life, it's subtracting and dividing out of them. And that's where, as I said before, the relationships, we have to be very mindful about where we're spending our time, because we don't live forever. And do you want to look up 5, 10, 15 years from now and you've given somebody the best years of your life and they were just time stealers?
Right. Nothing to show for it.
Nothing to show for it. No fruit, no healthy fruit. So we are going to end that conversation there. This is Try Not to Overthink It signing out. I'm RJ.
And I'm Khalil.
If you like what you heard, you like what you saw, we ask that you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification button, because every little bit helps. For those of you guys who are part of the journey with us, we love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We can't do this without you. We do this because of you. For those of you guys who would like to listen to this episode instead of watch it, I don't know why you would, because we're some very good looking people. My mommy and daddy made this. They did a damn good job. Shout out to my mommy and daddy. I wouldn't be the person I am today if it wasn't for those two individuals. So if you would like to listen to us instead of watch us, we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Audible, SoundCloud. Pretty much anywhere you can get your audio file, we can be located. Even your mama house, your grandmama house, the dog house,
mama house.
Hopefully, at some point in time, we want to be in the White House too. So if pretty much anywhere you can get your audio file, we can be located. If you would like to support us even more, we can be found on Instagram and TikTok, where we create content daily. So the links will be down in the description. But this is us signing out, and we will catch you guys next time. Peace.